Hello, everyone, and welcome to Madison College School of Professional and Continuing Education's webinar on Up Your Game to Attract and Retain Amazing Employees. Our speaker today is Kristin Gebhardt, Director of Program Development for Madison College's Strategic Partnerships and Innovation. This webinar is really for anyone who has employees or staff. Employee hiring and retention is at the top of the list of issues keeping leaders up at night. So Kristin will share some tips and strategies to attract, onboard, and retain the best and brightest for your organization. A link to the recording of this webinar will be sent to all attendees within the next few days. And now, here's Kristin Gebhardt.
And thank you, Patty, for that nice introduction. So since I have so much I want to say and tell you about, we're going to get going right away. So first of all, I want to start out with a quote by one of my favorite people. That would be Richard Branson. And it says, "Clients do not come first, employees come first. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of the clients." And this is one of the things I always think of, and another reason why I kind of went into the HR field so many years ago, is you really need to create that great employee experience, and that will take care of everything else for you. All right, so some objectives here. We're talking about recruiting new talent, right? We all know, those of us that hire people, it's real tough out there. And it's also hard to create or to retain those people and create a wonderful employee experience. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. We're going to reflect, and I'm going to ask you a question on the next slide, actually. So grab a piece of paper and jot something down, and I'd like you to think about a few things. And then we're going to end with an action plan that I'm going to have you, that I hope that you will do. Okay, let's get going. So first question, how did you hear about your organization and your position? So think about that. How did you hear? Was it a job posting? Was it from a friend of yours? How did you hear about your organization and your position? Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you another question here right away. But what made you want to work there? Was it the purpose, the vision that you believed in of that organization that made you want to work there? Did a friend of yours work there and it was a cool place? Did you just need a job or maybe more money? But what made you want to work there? All right. So let's talk a little bit about the top 2020 employer challenges that are going on. And a lot of these are not going to be a shock to a lot of you. Our aging workforce. Hello, we've been talking about those baby boomers retiring for a long time now, and guess what? It's happening. And we do not have the workers to go in and fill a lot of those positions, so we have a lot of skills gaps going on. It is real hard, right, to attract the right talent for your culture and your organization. It's very competitive out there. Higher compensation demands, especially for those hard to find jobs. And I've noticed, and the trend now is people talk about their compensation much earlier in the interview process these days. So people are a lot more comfortable talking about compensation than they have in the past. And building that sustainable workforce. You know, we get so caught up in the day-to-day that we forget about what we're going to do in the future. Do you have a succession plan? What's your bench strength like? That can be real hard, especially when you've got people, you know, retiring and people looking and finding other jobs. Improving leadership development. This connects directly with the aging workforce. You know, people are leaving, and so we promote other people into leadership positions, which is awesome, but a lot of times we're not developing those people, and that can cause problems for people working under those leaders. So we need to think of real cool and creative ways to develop our new leaders. And then it goes hand in hand with just training and developing your workforce. People want to learn new things and have new challenges and be developed in their jobs. And sometimes when budgets are tight, that's one of the first things that go, is your training budget. But there's so many cool things out there now that do not have to cost a lot, right? So that you can use for developing your team. Engagement, right, and enhancing employee engagement. That seems to be a buzzword these days. But what can you do to create that employee experience and make people want to come to work and want to achieve your mission along with you? So engagement is huge. And then, of course, keeping those amazing people that you tried so hard to get into your organization. How are we going to keep them? That's tough. It's competitive out there. And then benefits, right? You know, you want to have that great benefit plan and that attracts people, but on the same token, you know, health insurance alone can go up 4 to 5% per year. So how can you keep that great competitive benefit plan without breaking the bank and breaking your budget? Okay, so why is this so hard? Well, first, we do tend a lot more now than we have in the past is to hire from the outside instead of promoting and training from within. And what that does, and what it makes it look like for internal people, is there's less internal development and there's fewer clear career ladders and pathways for people that are already working for you. And a little history lesson for you, back in the 80s and 90s probably, hiring efforts really were more concentrated on entry-level jobs and recent grads. They aren't anymore. Again, we are looking to the outside much faster than we used to. And it was a heck of a lot easier to, and you had a larger pool to choose from when you're looking for entry level and recent grads from either, a cool community college like Madison College or university or even high school. So higher levels are harder to find and it's much more competitive. So it's gonna make you work harder. And we have a hard time retaining employees. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. So what are some common recruitment mistakes? And we've all made them, including myself. One is inaccurate postings. And what I mean here is, please, please, please do not take a job description and then just slap it into a posting and call that good and think that's going to be something that's going to make people get real excited to apply for your jobs. Take some time to talk about the key responsibilities of the job, of course, why it's a great place to work. And I'm not saying sugarcoating anything by promising things, but really talk about why, what's the mission of the company, why is it a great place to work, what does this job have to do with achieving the mission of your company? So make it a little bit more interesting to read instead of putting out a bunch of knowledge, skills, and abilities that go on for 3 to 4 pages, right? So that's not exciting. Once again, you see my theme here. We do fail a lot of times to consider recruiting from within. And I am not saying that there isn't great reasons to hire from the outside, because there definitely are. But I do think more and more we kind of forget that we do have some pretty cool people right under our nose that we could develop. We rely too much on the interview, right? Most of the time, we've already kind of developed our opinion on someone in the first 30 seconds. So what else can we do to really figure out who is going to fit in? And I highly recommend doing some sort of performance exercise for all of your applicants that are at least face-to-face. If not, you could actually do some cool things even before they come in, but I don't have enough time to talk about all of that. But really think about a performance exercise, something that they would be doing on the job to kind of help you figure out who would be the best candidate. Unconscious bias, and we all do this, and you have to be very, very, I guess, conscious of that. So when you're looking through resumes and applications and you spot something like, oh my gosh, that person's from my hometown, or we went to the same school, or we were in the same fraternity, sorority, how cool is that? Make sure you are not doing that, because that is really going to limit your pool, and you're not giving a fair shake to everyone in your pool, in your applicant pool. So another good reason for you not to be the only one that's interviewing, make sure you have a couple people doing that so you keep each other accountable. Hiring people less qualified than you. One of my favorite quotes, and I think Lee Iacocca and Steve Jobs had something similar to this, but is hire great people or people better than you and get the heck out of their way. So sometimes I think people feel threatened and they want to make sure they hire someone that isn't quite as qualified as you. But to me, that's a mistake. And you can always learn. I always learned from every single person on my team, and was and glad that I did. So that's why you're hiring someone, not for you to do the job, for them to do the job. Rejecting an overqualified candidate, and yes, we've all done that. We'll probably say, well, they're just going to leave in 6 months, right? Well, maybe, but they might be able to do something in 6 months that someone else couldn't have done in 2 years. Or better yet, maybe think of what you could do in the future to develop that person into a different position to keep them in your organization. And then rushing the hire. Sometimes you skip steps, things like that, because you want so badly to fill that job because maybe it's been open a while. But you really have to hit that happy medium when it comes to that, because it can cost a minimum of 20% of someone's salary to have to go back out in 2 to 3 months and rehire because you hired the wrong person. So you've got to hit that happy medium. Okay, Thanks, Kristin, you've told us all these horrible things and all these things we're doing wrong and all these challenges. So what now? What do we do? All right, well, first let's talk about your employer brand. You all have one. Do you know what it is? Right? It's the reputation and popularity, right, out there. So what is it? Is it something you like, or is it something maybe you don't like? It's really the values the organization gives to its employees, whether you realize you're doing it or not. So again, or another way to put it is, what's the internal and external perception of your organization? Have you looked out on Glassdoor lately and looked at some reviews and things that might be out there, and gone out on social media? So what's going on out there? And maybe it's good and maybe it's not, but that is a recruitment magnet if you've got a great employer brand. So we can talk about that a little bit more here too. I want you to rethink your recruiting strategy, right? And leverage social media. And I'm not talking just when you have an open position that you want to advertise and fill. I'm talking about all the cool things that your organization is probably doing right now that you could put out there and publicize, show off, publicize what cool things you are doing that people would love to be a part of. So really, and it's easier than ever to do things like that. So really think more about that. And collaborate with educational institutions such as Madison College, right? For us, we have employer advisory councils for almost every single one of our programs here. And we do that because we want to make sure our students are being educated and trained to be able to get a job right away, which is why we have such a great job placement rate here. We work with our employers and we make sure that they are getting what they need. Another idea is to collaborate with your workforce development boards in your communities. Again, they too are trying to train and retrain employees to receive employment. So maybe think about teaching a workshop, or maybe having an internship for someone who's participating in one of their programs, but let them know what you need. And again, Kristin's theme here, internal employees, don't forget what is right under your nose, because there are some great people, and does so much for morale and everything else internally when you are paying attention to those employees. Passive job seekers, another huge group that, again, I could probably take another hour to talk to you about how you can look for them, but that is another great way to try to find employees. Employee referral programs, another great idea if it works. I mean, it actually sometimes gets a bad rap, and you can't have that be your only recruitment source, but great employees can bring in other great employees. And please don't forget our veterans and our retirees, right? Retirees, like we said, are leaving the workforce, but some are coming back and maybe starting a second or third or fourth career, and they have so much to offer. Same as veterans. Veterans have had some great and unique training that they deserve a really great fair shake as well. So don't forget those groups. So let's talk about a few recruiting trends, right? Yeah, I talked before about not rushing the hire, but again, kind of come up with some creative ways that you could shorten your interview steps. Okay, so what could you do before people even come in the door? So when you're having a face-to-face interview, these are the people that really have a good shot of getting the position. Doing things like video interviews or phone interviews, things like that. Get creative to make that go as quickly as you can, but without skipping, steps. And then standardized recruitment process. Those HR people who might be listening to me today, that might be something pretty obvious, but oh my gosh, not so obvious to some people. But and what I'm saying here is making sure that you have interview questions prepared ahead of time. You're asking the same questions of all your candidates, and you're making it a really great experience for those candidates. I know working with executives, sometimes they might say, oh, I don't need any interview questions. I just have a couple of questions that I ask, and then I got it all figured out. But that can be very, very dangerous. And I don't think it makes you also look unorganized to the applicants. So make sure you are standardizing that process. And another trend right now is your best offer out of the gate, especially for those hard to find jobs, because a lot of times these great candidates have multiple job offers at the same time, and you don't want to lose out because you're haggling on a couple of $1,000s. So my advice is best offer out of the gate. All right, let's get creative. So we talked about your employer brand before. So some ideas to create the brand that you want is consider creating some authentic employee-generated videos. And what I mean by that is not one of those canned marketing videos, but really listening to your employees' stories and why they work where they work and why they like what they do. That can go a long way with candidates. Think of creating a story inventory for your employee referral program. So if you've got a whole list of stories, again, maybe some of the above that we just talked about, having cool stories for employees to be able to grab from to help recruit for you is a great option for you. And again, it's so much easier these days with smartphones to be able to create some pretty cool videos. And please, please, please don't stress out your candidates, right? Doing things like making sure they know where to park, and making sure that you maybe have them come 15 minutes earlier for an interview to read the questions so they know what you're going to ask them. And going a step further, making sure that list of questions is actually in front of them when they're being interviewed. It just reduces the stress, and it's okay to smile and make them feel comfortable. Those stress interviews, you don't see the authentic person, and you're going to get a much more authentic interview when you're making that first person feel welcome and happy that they're there. Consider showing the real job, the RJP, or the realistic job preview. You know, you could do that a few different ways. You could already have a video already created by someone maybe in the department that they're going to work and kind of going over some of the things that they'll be doing, or maybe take the time with your final candidates to spend an hour or two in the area that they'd be working in so they get a really good idea of what the job is about. Because again, this also gives them an opportunity to self-select out if it's not really the job for them. So that's a really good option in my opinion. All right, so now we've hired these great people. How can we retain them? How can we keep them in our organization? All right, now for you to reflect one more time. So let me ask, what would make you want to leave your current job? Think about that. What would make you want to leave right now? Okay, last question. What's the best way to retain you or your current coworkers? Have you thought about that? Because again, if it's the answer for you, it's probably the answer for others, but sometimes we don't even stop and think about that. So what would be a way to keep you and all your great team members? All right, so a few reasons why people leave. They have decreased interest in their work. Just because you hired them a year or two ago in a particular job, if they haven't done anything different or gotten new challenges or things like that, it gets really boring. And these days, people are not going to hang out for that. So what can you do to maybe make their work more interesting? They feel disconnected from the company vision. You know, we talked about the job posting and making sure that you connected the job to their vision and the purpose. And many times you'll hear in the executive suites or the higher level managers talking about the vision of your organization, but many times that doesn't trickle down to the team. And I think that can make people feel like they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. So make sure you don't make that mistake. There's a perception of no professional growth opportunities. This is a dead-end job. I don't see any pathways for myself. I'm going to look elsewhere. Poor leadership. We talked about that in one of my very first slides. Many people, probably 80% of the time, leave their job because of a poor boss, not necessarily the organization. So again, that can really decrease morale and make people leave. Speaking of morale, right? You've got that lower morale and you've got culture issues, and people, again, aren't going to put up with that and they're going to go elsewhere. And salary. Most of the time, people do not understand why they're paid the way they are. And probably only one study I read, there was about 22% of people that were happy with their salary. So there's some things we can do about that as well. All right. So let's talk about how to retain your talent, right? And we're talking a little bit about onboarding here. And no, I'm not just talking about first day orientation, although that should be a really good day for people, but make their first day memorable, right? In a good way. And that doesn't mean 4 hours of paperwork and then a few videos for them to watch. That is pretty much a horrible way to start. So show them that they made the right decision and put some time into that first day for them. Make it a great day. But make sure your onboarding goes well beyond that first day. Make sure that you're continuing to connect their job to the vision, to your vision, so they know why their job is so important to the organization. Get senior management out of their offices and talking with not only the new employees, but all employees. Do not underestimate the appreciation that employees have when there's a personal connection with the senior management. And then, of course, making sure there are opportunities to interact with peers and making it so that you're starting to build a cohesive team. And then consider a mentor or a buddy system. It is so great for a new employee to know that they can go to someone to ask questions of, and that they feel that they know they can talk to that person at any time. We do that a lot with our faculty here at Madison College. So let's talk about engagement, right? Consider conducting a stay interview, right? To stay updated, meaning, find out from people before an exit interview what maybe is going wrong, what kind of obstacles are they facing that you can do something about. Find out what's going on with them and what challenges they have, and maybe some things that they're interested in the future. Consider some short surveys, and I mean like 1 to 3 questions to find out what's going on in the organization. But again, don't do that unless you're going to act on those results. There's nothing worse to morale than to put out a survey and you do absolutely nothing about it. Embrace career development and professional growth. Find out what people are interested in and figure out ways that you can help them accomplish that. Cross-train. Cross-train people to provide fresh challenges. That's a benefit and a win-win to everyone. People feel happy and appreciated when they're able to learn something new, and you've got someone else that knows other jobs in case you have an issue with someone gone. So don't forget about cross-training. And this is one of my favorites, and I highly, highly recommend you do this. When you give negative or constructive feedback to someone, make sure that you have given them probably 5 statements of appreciation. And I'm not talking about all at once, but really you should be expressing gratitude all the time, and be specific. Do not underestimate the value of being appreciated and respected as an employee. That goes a long way. Educate and be transparent about compensation. Like I said, like I said earlier, there's probably only about 22% of employees that are even happy about the compensation that they have. So tell them why they're paid the way they are. What's the market? Do you lead the market? Do you lag the market? And why? Let them know why they are compensated the way they are. And consider total reward statements. A lot of times people know what their base salary is, but they do not understand the value of the other benefits that they have. So doing something like that gives a much better picture to your employees when you do something like that. All right, so what's next? Start with fact finding, okay? Find out what's going on. What's the pulse of the organization? How are people feeling? Get their ideas. And then ask questions, seek understanding, so you know what you can do to make things better for people if you need to. And then prioritize. Pick 3 things to focus on improving over the next year, okay? And some of those can be a quick hit that you know that you can accomplish. Something else might be a stretch, but trying to make it the greatest employee experience that you can, and then focus on those biggest win opportunities. I want you to create a picture of your organization that your employees find hard to abandon. And if we were all on the beach right now, that would be a great place and none of us would leave. But soon, everyone, soon. All right, I want you to create an action plan. What could you do to ensure people are successfully socialized into your organization and they're happy? I want you to commit to 1 or 2 recruitment or retention changes. And please email me to tell me how it's going. I know we went through this really fast today because I wanted to make sure I was valuing your time, but I would love to hear from you. Any questions, any feedback that you have for me, and you just want to talk about what you're doing, I would love to hear from you. And there's my email if you care to do that. So at that, I am going to turn it back to my friend Patty, and thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and have a great rest of the day.
Well, thank you, Kristin, very much for sharing those tips. And thank you all for joining us today to learn how to attract and retain those amazing employees. If I'll be sending out a recording of this webinar in a few days. For more professional development opportunities, please visit our website at madisoncollege.edu/ce. Have a good afternoon, everyone.